Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Engineering Today, and I hope you're all having a great time. The date is finally here. SpaceX plans to launch its Starship for the fourth time on June 5th, if all goes well. But before they can set a launch date in stone, they need the green light from the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration. Assuming everything is good to go, the launch will happen from SpaceX's base in South Texas, starting as early as 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And don't worry if you can't make it there in person, SpaceX will be streaming the whole thing live. This time, they want to show they can bring Starship back safely and reuse it for future missions. They'll try to land the booster part in the Gulf of Mexico and control Starship as it comes back down to Earth. Meanwhile, an explosion rocked SpaceX's test facility in McGregor, Texas on Thursday, shooting flames and a massive plume of smoke into the sky. This happened during a ground-based test of a Raptor rocket engine, the same type used in Starship. NASA Spaceflight, which streams live from the site, reported the incident. SpaceX hasn't provided any updates about the explosion. Since personnel were kept at a safe distance during the test, it's unlikely anyone was hurt. SpaceX tests its Merlin and Raptor engines at the McGregor facility before flights. The Merlin engines go into the Falcon 9 rocket, while the Raptor engines power the Starship. The Starship's first stage, known as the Super Heavy, is fitted with 33 Raptor engines. These engines generate a massive 17 million pounds of thrust during launch, making the Starship the most powerful rocket ever made. Elon Musk was talking about how the launch could happen really soon, like in just a few days. But with this explosion, things might not go as planned. SpaceX will look really closely at what happened to figure out how to stop it from happening again. They're all about being safe and making things better all the time. On the other hand, Elon Musk recently shared some big plans for SpaceX on social media. He talked about building 2 tall structures called Starship Towers at Cape Canaveral in Florida. These towers will be used for launching Starships into space. Musk also mentioned that SpaceX has come up with a new metal alloy that's much better than the stainless steel they've been using for the Starship. By the way, the talk of going to Mars gets a lot of attention, but we shouldn't forget about how new space technology could affect things here on Earth. Starship could also make space exploration cheaper to put things into high orbits around our planet, just like how Falcon 9 made it easier to get to low Earth orbit. Starship might open up a whole new market for higher orbits. One company, Virtus Solis, wants to take advantage of these higher orbits. They're working on a cool idea, making a power plant in space to gather solar energy all day and night. They want to put it in a special orbit called Monia, which keeps things in sunlight all the time. John Bucknell, the founder of Virtus Solis, says Starship is a game-changer for them. He says it makes their business idea much more appealing. But he warns that in the past, the U.S. hasn't been too keen on space-based solar power. Virtus Solis hopes to change that with the help of Starship. Now, why is this such a big deal? Well, for starters, it could make solar energy from space cheaper than what we use on Earth. Normally, putting things in space is super expensive, especially big stuff like solar arrays. But Starship is different. It's designed to be used over and over again, which makes launching things into space much cheaper. Virtus Solis says they can make a big transmitter in space that collects solar energy and beams it back to Earth. They think their method will be more efficient than anything before, but they need to test it out in space to be sure it works. To gather solar energy, Virtus Solis plans to build huge arrays of solar panels in space. Robots will put these arrays together piece by piece. Each module will be about 5.3 feet wide, and they'll put together thousands of them to make one big array. They say that with enough modules, they could gather a massive amount of energy, way more than we use now. Now, here's where Starship comes in handy. It can carry lots of these modules into space at once, making the whole process faster and cheaper. And because of the special orbit they want to use, these arrays will always be in sunlight, making them super efficient. But the US hasn't been very supportive of this idea in the past. They did a lot of research on space-based solar power but decided not to fund it anymore. Virtus Solis thinks this is a mistake. They believe their idea is the cheapest and most environmentally friendly way to solve the world's energy problems. Despite the lack of support, Virtus Solis plans to launch a small version of their system by 2027. This will let them test everything out and make sure it works before going bigger. They hope that by using Starship, they can help people all over the world get access to clean energy and fight energy poverty. China is also working on space-based solar power, but Virtus Solis thinks China's approach won't solve the world's energy problems like theirs will. And speaking of power, the Hubble Space Telescope has been up there since 1990, giving us stunning views of space. But it's getting old and needs a checkup. And Jared Isaacman wants to send a team up there to give it some TLC. He's done space stuff before, like funding a mission in 2021 called Inspiration-4. The idea for a checkup was first talked about in 2022, and NASA asked other space companies for their ideas too. But we haven't heard much since then. Recently, some emails from NASA got out, and they show that some people are worried about sending folks up to Hubble. The last time Hubble got a checkup was in 2009. NASA wasn't sure if they should do it because of a past space accident, but they ended up doing it and everything went fine. Hubble keeps doing its job, looking at cool space stuff, but it's getting older and sometimes it has little hiccups. Plus, it's slowly falling closer to Earth. NASA's old space shuttles, which were good for fixing things in space, aren't around anymore. So it's a bit tricky to plan a new checkup. NASA thinks Hubble can keep working okay until at least the late 2020s, but Isaacman and his space friends want it to last even longer, maybe until the 2030s. They think they can do it with a good maintenance mission. But not everyone is sure about this plan. Some worry that it's risky to send people up there, especially if they haven't done a spacewalk before or if their space suits haven't been tested enough. And getting to Hubble is hard, even for experienced astronauts. Isaacman says they wouldn't just wing it, they'd plan everything carefully, just like NASA always does. He thinks they could use their skills and new technology to make the mission work. Hubble's had some issues lately, like wonky gyroscope, but NASA says it's not a big deal and Hubble can still do science stuff. They have backups for most things, so Hubble can keep going even if a few parts stop working. Isaacman knows it's not his call to decide what to do with Hubble, but he's glad they looked into it. He's okay if the mission doesn't happen, but he thinks they've all learned something valuable from trying to make it work. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the like button if you find the video interesting, and kindly provide your valuable feedback in the comment section. This will help us to improve.